let's get into the news. And the first news story is that there is a crossover special event coming up from Marvel. Um, and
Now,
we
wait a
talked
second.
about.
Hold on. Didn't we just talk 2 weeks ago about how Marvel said after Secret Empire they weren't going to be doing any more events for 18 months?
Yes and no. Yes, we did talk about that, but what I think they're going to go to, and I think I might have said this then, honestly, I don't know because that was 2 weeks ago, is they're going to do something with what DC, like something similar to what DC's doing with their stuff right now, where they've got the crossovers with a couple of books.
So
Like
the limited
yes,
crossover, the or even a mini series, which would make a certain
yeah,
degree of sense,
yeah.
as opposed to
I
having
think
it be spanning the entire breadth of titles.
yes. So, for example, with this, like what I'm thinking of right now with the in DC, this would be like, um,
The
oh
Justice
god,
League Suicide Squad crossover
yeah,
that just happened,
the Justice League Suicide Squad crossover,
or the
the
Teen Titans Deathstroke one that's coming up.
yep, that one, or the button with Batman and the Flash, which is starting this week,
Yep.
or they did the one with Superman and Action Comics, so stuff like that where it's focusing. It's not going to be like, all right, here's Civil War 3, and here's the tie-in with Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel and Captain America Sam Wilson and Captain America Steve Rogers and all
And
these.
to be fair, DC does look like they have a big event coming up, being done by Scott Snyder, that focuses on Batman, but looks like it's going to be encompassing more of the
Yeah,
DC universe as a whole. It's going to be a bigger deal. But it's
yeah,
been a while since they've had something like that, and that's the thing, is that they are pacing those things out a little bit more than what they were doing. It was before. It's been like Marvel's been, which is another event every 6 to 12 months at minimum,
yep,
and
getting them.
Marvel, we realize, or they're starting to realize, it's been a bit of too much.
I'm also starting to realize that where we talked about this in the discussion last episode, because I was just going to say something we talked about there. So if you want to get in on the whole event thing, watch or listen to last week's episode or the last episode that we did. But this one is that Spider-Man 2 will reunite Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Or will unite Peter Parker and Miles Morales at last. So Corey didn't read the first one, but I believe this has the same creative team. So it's Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, um, who they were doing the Miles Morales book for the longest time. I think still are doing the Miles Morales Spider-Man book. Um, but the first one came out in 2012, and this was a 5 issue. There was just 5 issues of this, which um was
So
the
the last time that this happened, the Ultimate Universe still existed separate
yes,
from the 616 universe. It was before Secret Wars 2. It was
it was before Cataclysm even.
right. So it was, they were two separate universes. They had never met before. It was taking Peter Parker that we knew from the regular Marvel universe and introducing him to the Miles Morales character, who had replaced the Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, who had recently died and had
Yes.
become the Spider-Man of that universe. And it was the first crossing over of these characters in that respect. Now, since then, the Ultimate Universe got wiped out. Miles Morales has come from the Ultimate Universe to the standard Marvel Universe, although that Marvel Universe isn't really considered the 616 anymore. It changed because of some things that happened during Secret Wars. And so there's a lot of confusion as to whether or not Miles Morales, as we know him now, actually remembers being a part of a different universe. Like, now his
Well,
mother is alive again,
yeah.
when she had died over there. And there are
So
some questions as to how much of it he recalls.
this is something I want to hit on because I was thinking about this as you were saying all this. I do still think it is technically the 616 universe, just because of certain books, like the recent crossover event that we had with Miles Morales and the Spider-Gwen book, where they would go back and forth, and it would be Earth 65 for Gwen and Earth 616 for Miles.
A lot of people seem to think that it's not exactly the 616
It's
anymore, that a
not.
lot of things change because of the combinations and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's been manipulated by Reed Richards and by Molecule Man, who are outside of it now, that are kind of having a hand in how things shaped up. Molecule Man. So one of the things that happened, I guess, in that crossover is that Miles and Peter met up with Molecule Man at some point, and Molecule Man was really hungry, and he's like, do either of you have anything to eat? And Miles had a hamburger that had been in his pocket for about 15 years in a stasis time bubble, which the 15 years didn't count, but the like week that had still been in his pocket before that did. So it must have been from McDonald's. And so Miles is like, oh yeah, you know what? I have this hamburger in my skin tight outfit that's just been stinking it up next to my ball sack. Here you go.
And that was
Molecule
from
Man,
Secret Wars.
yes, and Molecule Man enjoyed the burger so much, extra spicy flavoring, that he said, thanks, kid, I owe you one. And it may be that the owe you one was either sticking him into this new universe, or more likely being the reason why his mother is alive now in this new universe.
Yeah. So to fast forward through with the whole Spider-Man 2 or in Spider-Man, at the end, Peter Parker is, he, after just successfully saving the day over there, he had a couple roles over there. He was, one, capturing Mysterio, but two, was for a very young, like, I believe Miles in this time is like 13, 14 years old, and was trying to live up to the legacy of the Ultimate Universe Peter Parker. He was looking up to the 616 Peter Parker throughout this whole ordeal. But we get through, and Peter does a Google search at the end of who is Miles Morales
On his Earth.
on his Earth. He's in his shower and all that stuff, and does this. So this is where it's gonna
Google search on this kid in his shower. That's weird, man.
No, he got done, like, the post game shower and all that stuff. Getting all that, because again, he's wearing skin tight outfit here, so you got to get the spider funk off you. And so as he's drying his hair, and much like a lot of people do, I hear of these things because my hair isn't that long, but you're sitting there and you're just drying your hair, and you're all of a sudden you're like, wait, hold on. And you're thinking about other things than just like, okay, back, forth, and all that. And so he thinks, well, if he knew me, the Peter Parker in his Earth, who's the Miles Morales on my Earth? And then he Googles Miles Morales, like, who is Miles Morales? That's what they're going to answer here. I think then closing a storyline, a story point that seemed to have been forgotten, or many people thought retconned, and all that.
Yeah, no, so here's a couple of points of contention, just because that's who I am. One, I use Google. You ever just Google somebody at random, just like put in some random name into Google, and what kind of success do you usually have? Of like not celebrities, not politicians, not sports stars, but just random person. Like, here's a random person from work. Hey, I'm gonna Google you and see what I find. What do you think you're actually gonna find? Usually not a lot, unless that's a person of actual note. I don't know how much you get just from Googling somebody.
You would be surprised. I did this with a friend. I did this for a friend because I noticed he hadn't had, or his Facebook had gone away. And I'm like, where is his Facebook? And it was one of these, the joint ones that a lot of my people do, or a lot of people I know that do, with like the husband and wife thing. I'm like, okay, where's, because I'd seen him, but not her. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And all this stuff. And I'm like, all right. And I did a search, and I found, like, on the first page, a website that had his address, a phone number, what if he had political party affiliations. I'm like, holy shoot.
I found that site recently that was like, you can put in anybody's name or something and you can find out a whole bunch of stuff about them. That's not necessarily Google. But And also, this is like, as we're going forward, it's going to be more like that. But when Spider-Man 1 came out, I just don't know. I just don't know that, hey, here's this kid that I never heard of before. I'm going to put his name into Google. Plus, he should be 13, so he shouldn't even have a Facebook account at that point in time, or at least not much of one. So I just question what makes Peter Parker say, whoa, when he looks him up, that the name would have given him. But secondly, and here's the other part, is that we now do have a Miles Morales in this universe. So what, we're going to have 2 of them? You know, is this going to go back to that other continuity storyline, or is this going to be, well, now we've got Peter Parker hanging out with Miles Morales on a regular basis, pretty much in these books. And so for the last year that they've been kicking it, Spidey style, he hasn't thought to mention, oh, by the way, buddy, you'll never guess, but when I met you at another universe, do you remember that? I don't know if I remember that, but maybe we remember that, maybe we don't. Then I Googled you when I got back here, and there's this whole other guy, you know, and I'm not quite sure what this story is really aiming for at this point, because we have a Spider-Man and Spider-Man crossover that kind of continues to happen already. So I'm not sure what this new series is really supposed to be, other than Bendis is like, well, I left it open, so I'm just gonna go fill this with something, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I don't think, because I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened since then. I mean, we had a Secret War, we've had a Civil War, we've had a Spider-Verse, that we've seen the Edge and the whole of, and there have been Jackals, you know, clone conspiracies. Oh God, good God, I read way too many fucking comics. There've been all these things that have happened in between Spider-Man and, actually, also I think in there, his brain had sort of gotten taken over by Dr. Octopus.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot of things in there that.
Also, he's hanging out with his dead ex-girlfriend, except she's a teenager from another world. And how do you look at her
going
and go,
out with Miles Morales? Oh, sorry. What?
Right, yeah. Oh, and by the way, hey, 16-year-old girl, I kind of used to have sex with you, but don't worry about it, because when you had kids, they were actually by my arch nemesis, who then killed you and cloned you and stuff. But that's something that's a whole other level of weird. That it's not as weird as just me being 30-something years old and looking at you and going, yeah, I hit that, sort of. It's like this whole convoluted mess of continuity with Marvel is just a little frustrating as it is. And I don't want to like piss on the characters, because I really like Miles Morales, and I in theory like Spider-Gwen, but it's so weird to have them all running around together, which leads into this other thing that you posted about earlier today. Is Marvel has this other thing that they're sneaking up on us called Legacy, which may be, we're not sure if it's an event. It shouldn't be if it's not 18 months yet. But it might be like their next version of Marvel Now, except Marvel Legacy, where they're going to try to reintroduce some of their original characters, the original versions of characters, like the original Thor is back as Thor, and Tony back as Iron Man, and stuff we talked about last show. And maybe still having some way of including people like Sam and Jane, Thor, and whatever else. But it is just tough as a lapsed fan, as a potential new fan, as a person who's watching the movies. It's always weird to me to try to describe this to somebody who's not intimately familiar with everything and say, oh, well, this is how this works. And here's the original X-Men who came from the past to the present and then changed a lot and aren't really from the past now, maybe. And it's just such a weird thing to try to work with. And then you have someone like Bendis writing Spider-Man is probably about as great as Bendis gets, you know, or his own stuff, or Jessica Jones. But he sort of has carte blanche to the stories that he wants to tell. It feels like when Bendis wants to tell a story, continuity doesn't matter. Other people's storylines don't matter. It's just like, I'm just writing it this way, and people will deal with it. And that's kind of a tough thing to deal with if you're like, say, Dan Slott writing the other Spider-Man stuff and going, wait, what did Bendis just do with my Spider-Man? Okay, I'll try to figure out how to make that work later in my own books.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
No, yeah, I mean, I do think it's going to be a fun read, but at the same time, I do think it's going to be one of those things that we will need to wait and see on when
it will very likely be entertaining, if nothing else. Even if it doesn't make sense, it'll be entertaining. Bendis is a very good dialogue guy, and he's, like I said, he's very good with Spider-Man, both versions of Spider-Man. So I'm sure it'll be enjoyable for the people who like his stuff and like Spider-Man books. It's hard to say at this point what he's going for in this.
Yeah. Well, here, let's move on to the next news story. And this is hitting on another aspect of the fandom that is Gregory, and that's Ghost in the Shell gets a new anime from Kenji Kamiyama and Shinji Aramaki. I'm butchering them names, and I apologize. It's because I am not fluent in Japanese. But Kondasha and Production IG announced a couple weeks ago that a new anime series based on Masamune Shiro's Ghost in the Shell manga has been greenlit, and it is being done by Kenji Kamiyama, who did Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, and Shinji Aramaki, who did Appleseed. They will be co-directing the anime. There hasn't been anything released as far as format and release dates. But yeah, this is pretty cool, seeing as how here we had the movie come out with Scarlett Johansson that was a thing.
Had some challenges.
Yeah, had some challenges, and I didn't see it. I'll be honest, I did not see it. I'm probably going to wait for, just because I haven't seen good reviews on it, so I'm like, I'll wait until it comes out on Netflix.
I got to be honest, with all the hoopla of the reasons, and I'm not going to argue the authenticity of the reasons that people had for not seeing it. I just looked at it and didn't think it looked like a very interesting movie. It looked like a lot of other stuff that comes out that is a lot of CGI and a lot of standard guns and action and things that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but just isn't enticing to me. Like it looked like stuff that I've seen so many times before that it's not enough to draw me out of my home to go see it in a theater. Lucy was very successful when Lucy came out for what the movie was. But again, I saw Lucy not in the theater when it came to cable later on, and same sort of deal. It's like, it's fine. I watched it. It's perfectly okay, but it's not like something that I'm screaming that I have to go see more of this, or that I feel like I missed out by not seeing it in the theater when it came out.
Yeah, and
I like Scarlett Johansson, but I just wasn't interested.
So I'll ask you this, because I believe you said in the pre-show that you saw the original anime.
A long time ago. I mean, I used to work in comics retail, and we used to play a lot of anime in the stores. I couldn't tell you a lot about it at this point. Like the anime I remember watching the most was things like the Ranma 1/2. I was into the series called Key the Metal Idol that I thought was really good. Record of the Lotus War, which is kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy thing, except in anime. Those sorts of things, and Ninja Scroll, because Ninja Scroll was just badass and awesome, but really kind of dirty and freaky. Those are some of the classics, and this is definitely a classic, but it, again, like, it wasn't something that I was super into. I know that a lot of people really are. Another story that Beatmaster put into the doc for us is that they're going to be doing a live action Akira, and Jordan Peele is apparently going to be doing that film, which is great for Jordan Peele. I'm very excited for him. I remember seeing Akira and the same sort of thing. It's cool when you're watching it, but it didn't leave enough in my brain to make me go, oh yeah, I'm a huge Akira fan now. It's like, visually it's awesome, but I don't have like Akira love or anything.
Yeah. So going back to why I had asked you about where you had seen it was because I had seen Ghost in the Shell through Standalone Complex, where they retooled one of the movies and made it into a TV series for Adult Swim. And then later watched through Hulu the first Ghost in the Shell movie. I think it was like a re-release or something like that. And there are scenes in the trailers that I've seen from Ghost in the Shell, the live action one, that I'm like, okay, these are beats taken from the anime. I should like this. I should like this. But then hearing people that I respect, like oh god, major spoilers. I'm blanking on his name. He's on the morning stream on Mondays. Say that he didn't like it. Steven Schleicher, that he didn't like it from the beginning. I'm like, I might hold off on this now.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's another thing too, is that if I've seen a movie done in an anime or a cartoon form, and I'm already a fan of that thing, do I need to see that redone beat for beat in a live action thing? Because that's what Disney's doing. Like, they redid the Jungle Book, and I saw some of it on a plane. Not kidding, actually. And it just, like, it's fine, but it's nowhere as appealing to me as it was seeing that cartoon years ago. The Beauty and the Beast that just came out, same sort of thing. It's like, I seen Beauty and the Beast. I liked it. It's not my favorite Disney movie, but it's certainly a good movie. And I have no interest in going to see the live action remake of it with all the little fucking household adornments looking really creepy in it. To me, the new Luminaire and everything, just, they don't sit right with me, on top of the fact that it's like, I know the fucking movie. I know the story. I know everything about it. I enjoyed it as a cartoon. So why do I need to see this done again with live action, where it's probably not going to be as good, and it's going to just try to like milk my nostalgia, and my nostalgia is milked just fine by watching the fucking original over again.
Yeah, and I probably should rephrase this a little bit then, but from the trailers, I had seen bits from there that were from the original, from rewatching it. Like, there's the scene where she goes, like, she moves her hand over her face, and when her, like, as her face, like, she's got floating head, and then boom, she's like, you know, vanished and stuff like that. Or the fighting in the puddle. And then there's a few other scenes that are from the original anime. It's like that stuff. Okay, yeah, that's a cool thing. Like, you know, give a shout out for the longtime fans. That's, but, you know, keep it, you know, different enough to where they're not going to be like, it was better in the movie. It was better in Japan.
It was better in the cartoon, or I don't even know if it's necessarily that it was better or worse. It's just, I think it's unnecessary to straight up adapt the same thing over again. Now, we've seen I don't know, have you seen the trailer for the new Thor movie?
Yes. And okay. Oh god, it's so fucking good.
It looks great. It looks absolutely great, and it mixes things, like stuff that we recognize. We recognize the Planet Hulk stuff. We
Yep.
recognize Hela as a character, and when they show Hela in the full-on garb with like the big headdress and everything, that looks so fucking amazing because it's straight out of the comics. And I'm not saying that you can't have something that's an homage to the previous versions of it, but what I am saying is that if I like Ghost in the Shell already, then going to see the same movie just reproduced with live acting doesn't really give me enough to compel me to do it.
Yeah.
If I like another movie, they did this with Psycho. Back in the 90s, they did the Vince Vaughn version of Psycho, shot for shot, redone, based off of the original one. And it was a flop. It was a total flop. Because you don't need to do that. You don't need to remake the same damn thing. If you want to make something that's got, you know, new stories that have to do with the original characters, or do something that's at least slightly different to warm it up, although people are going to judge you, and not unfairly, against the original in that case anyways, but at least make it interesting in that regard. And I just don't know. This wasn't interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was interesting to people who were fans of the original anime either. I think that they really, in some cases, yes, they found it disrespectful because of the fact that there were Caucasians playing characters that they didn't feel should be played by Caucasians. And I'm not going to argue whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing. You know, it's unfortunately that's the reality of Hollywood, is that they bank their stars, and the most bankable stars at this point still seem to be Caucasians. So that's how they're going to do things. But it would be nice to see change in that regard. I always say that it would be nice to have more inclusion. But I still think that even sidestepping that, people who should have been interested in this, I don't think that there's a reason to compel them. I think that if you have that movie come out, and at the same time you have the actual anime available to watch on Netflix, or to just like go buy a new special edition on DVD, I think a lot more people are going to buy the DVD than go see the movie.
Mm-hmm. And Beatmaster's bringing up a very good point about this, is that most reporters talking about the whitewashing aspect never saw the source material.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's the hunt on the internet of like, who can we fucking feed on today? Who can we point out that they're doing something wrong? And just like everybody's just like, oh, did you hear about Ghost in the Shell and how all these white people are in it, and it shouldn't be white people because it's a Japanese film and everything? And it's like, well, do you have any actual information about that? Have you ever seen it? No? Then shut the fuck up. I know you want to get your clicks, but shut the fuck up. I'm an uneducated bastard all the time talking my fucking mind, and I get it. I'm being hypocritical, but shut the fuck up.
No, yeah, like I mean, honestly, out of that, like the Scarlett Johansson character, I could see being Asian, you know, being Japanese, but the one, I think it's Saito, that has the prosthetic, the eyes, the circle things instead of eyeballs. He always in the anime, he looked to me to be white. Same with the other guy who had like the mullet. I think it was Baito. Also seemed to me to be white.
A lot of anime characters look Caucasian.
Yeah.
And that's by design. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are, but a lot of the characters also don't have a race, including fucking robots. So it's kind of it's a weird thing to say, but I always say that if the person who wrote or made the original thing doesn't really have a problem with it, then it's probably not up to us to judge them on it. And I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe I saw some stuff from the originator of Ghost in the Shell, who did the original manga, saying, yeah, this character was never Japanese, or this character was always able to be Caucasian in my mind. And so I don't take issue with it. So now that could also just be a person who's like, well, you know, maybe they were supposed to be Japanese, but right now I've got a big fucking movie check I want to cash. And so you guys go see my big fucking movie.
Or the fact of, or just a matter of the fact that here you have a TV show, manga, movie that takes place so far into the future that what at one point was, you know, white people live in North America and Europe, and black people are in Africa, and you know Japanese people are over in Japan, and Chinese, all that has blended so much to where who used to be white now looks more, like this or like that. Like the races have blended so much that
Yeah, I mean, half of anime takes place in a town called Neo Tokyo, and so yeah, sure, it's part Tokyo, but it's also part Neo, and that guy was the whitest motherfucker alive in the Matrix movies. So, I mean, you can't argue that Keanu Reeves is Asian because he had to learn kung fu by getting it uploaded in his brain.
yes. Um, the last thing I'll say honestly is I am excited for new, especially with if the depending on how the format is of the new anime, whether it be a movie or a TV series. But and this goes into the weird subbed and dubbed thing. And I will share real quickly. I'm always of what did I hear it first in? Did I hear it first in with subtitles? Then I will continue to hear it with or watch it with subtitles. But if I heard it dubbed, I want to hear that English cast again. So if it's got that same people involved and they're the same, characters, I want to hear them doing the, reprising their roles.
I know it's not right, but my love of Sailor Moon came from watching the English version of the show, which was completely chopped up and fucked up, and characters changed genders and everything else, and it was all pretty dumb compared to the original. But that's how I watched Sailor Moon. And with Ranma, I was watching Ranma, and all the stuff we were watching was the dub stuff. So that's how I picture Ranma, is those voices, those characters speaking in English. And not to take anything away from the subbed, which is probably closer to the original intents and everything. That's just how it was.
Back to Marvel news. So a Squirrel Girl-centric New Warriors TV show gets a full series order. So this is the start of a freeform universe. And I don't mean like freeform, like, hey, anything goes. I mean, the TV network Freeform now has 2 Marvel TV shows in the works over there.
In development. Now, where's Runaways? Runaways is happening on Hulu?
Yes, Runaways is on Hulu. Inhumans will be on ABC. Cloak and Dagger is on Freeform. The New Warriors TV show will be on Freeform as well. I don't think there's anything else in the way of TV
at the moment.
Yeah.
Although keep waiting for Power Pack.
Yeah. This is actually honestly really interesting to me because this is going to be more of a comedy. And so I heard something where they taught where I forget who it was. It was like one of the programming people, one of the Freeform executives said that there could actually be a few different ways that they do this. Whether they do like they've been doing a little bit like a comedy night, like Mondays is the Freeform's comedies. I'm using air quotes because some of them shows like Young and Hungry or Baby Daddy, you sort of get lost. You sort of just be like, yeah, I could, and then you have the other nights where it's like, it's more the drama, is like you're Switched at Births and you're the Fosters,
Pretty Little Liars, which is finishing up.
Yeah, Pretty Little Liars, which is finishing up, like Switched at Birth is too. And so you could do that, like, keeping the genres there, because I guess Cloak and Dagger is going to be more of a drama, where New Warriors is going to be more of a comedy. Or do we do a Marvel night? Do we have a brand, like possibly even something branded with for Marvel, where we've got, here's the Squirrel Girl and the New Warriors, hour-long comedy or whatever it will be, and then here's the hour drama of Cloak and Dagger.
See, that's the thing, is that if New Warriors is considered a comedy, then it makes more sense to pair it with a comedy. And then you also look at what the CW is doing, where other than when they moved recently, they moved Legends of Tomorrow to after Flash. Initially, they were doing all the superhero shows on separate nights, and I think that's the way they want to bring it back next year. is that there's going to be one every night, it looks like, of the week when they introduce Black Lightning into the mix. But trying to give them their own standing so that it's not just an overpowering, like, here's 2 DC superhero shows in a row, or here's 2 on this night and then 2 on the next night and then 1 on a third night. Trying to keep them separated out makes a little bit more sense, because then you keep getting people back. The idea is to say, oh, I'm watching Flash, and what's on after Flash? If I just stick around on this channel, maybe I'll check out this other CW show. Maybe after I watch Arrow, I'll watch Supernatural, or maybe I watch Supergirl and I watch iZombie afterwards, or whatever the case may be. So in that regard, especially with only 2 shows and with them supposedly having different feels, I would say have them separate.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of weirded out by the fact that it's Squirrel Girl with the New Warriors, and Squirrel Girl has no real standing with the New Warriors. And the New Warriors themselves, while they have some comedic characters in them, namely Speedball, they were taken... I mean, when you start out with them in the 90s, they were more of a semi-serious superhero group. They've done some comedy stuff with them years later after they fucked them up really bad in the first Civil War, but finally eventually got them back together. But I'm not exactly sure why this was the choice of where to put her, as opposed to doing like a Great Lakes Avengers, other than the fact that they probably can't get the title Avengers for the TV series at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And also, I mean, I think, you know, just doing like New Warrior, I don't know. I like using the New Warriors name because you do get these other characters that you can bring in and it not be something super serious or something like that.
But they haven't named any other characters at this point either, as far as I know. So that's the other part is, do I want to... I mean, who are they going to use? Are they going to use... Speedball would make sense, although Speedball's power set is one of those things that you'd have to spend a good amount of money on to get to work on TV. The Marvel Boy, Vance Astro, whatever character that they have playing him Justice. Firestar was part of the New Warriors. Nimorito was part of the New Warriors. I'm not sure who the characters are on the team now because it's gone through so many incarnations. It'd be great if it was Night Thrasher with his 90s cool armor and skateboard. But that's the thing. It's really, what are they going to do? And what does a comedy with superheroes look like? Because the closest we've seen on TV so far in that regard has been Powerless, which isn't really focused on the superheroes. It's focused on the people around them. And Marvel has talked about doing a damage control show that would be very similar, which would lend more to comedy too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to see more about what this is going to be. But Squirrel Girl is something that we've wanted to see happen. And there have been actresses who've been pitching to play Squirrel Girl. Some reasonably well-known actresses, and then some that are just up and coming, like the girl who played Barb in Stranger Things and is now playing... I forget what... She's playing Enid, I think, on Riverdale.
Yeah.
She wanted to play Squirrel Girl. Anna Kendrick had pitched to play Squirrel Girl in a movie. That was kind of a big deal.
I like the first choice you said there of the actress who played Barb.
I really like her too. I like both.
Yeah. I mean, I like both too, but the Anna Kendrick, I don't think her comedy necessarily would suit.
Well, I also don't see her
Girl.
coming to TV on Freeform of all things to do the role. She was talking about doing it in a movie.
No, yeah, definitely in a movie. But I mean, you know,
I guess if Enid turns out to be the one who killed Cheryl Blossom's brother, then they can get her away from the CW to do this.
Yeah, just kill her off in all the shows and all the things. I don't know. I'm honestly excited, like, about this show. I mean, because I've been where I read the last incarnation of New Warriors, where they were traveling around on Mount Wundagore. Yes, I said that correctly. They were traveling around on the Mount Wundagore, all throughout the all throughout the universe, like it's a giant freaking TARDIS. Um, and I do think putting Squirrel Girl in there would make probably the most sense. Because she's one of those characters where she's not always super serious. I mean, she's mainly there to she's here to kick butts and eat nuts.